All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Really Great Agent Podcast. My name is Mark EITEL. I've been running a mortgage brokerage team for about 25 years, and that's why I wear a hat so you can't see my giant bald spot. But
Right.
over the years, I've met some really, really good agents. I met a ton of bad agents, but I've met some really good agents. And guys, a really good agent can make or break a real estate transaction. So, because of that, we wanted to introduce you to one more of the really great agents that I've worked with over the years. So, this week, I've got the pleasure of having Scott Wheeler as my guest, and I'm going to throw it over to Scotty. Hey, Scotty, how are you, my man?
Very good. Good afternoon, Mark. Good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you. Man, I have known you longer than most people in my life. I was blessed to meet Scotty fresh out of the box. I think you were probably one of the first three or four people in the business that I've met. So, yeah, you've got quite a track record. And I've always admired your ability to kind of go above and beyond and really embrace the community side of real estate. So, I want to touch on that. But before we dive into that, how did you end up in real estate?
Well, actually, I know that you know the story. Had a lending company in West Palm Beach, Florida, and we had a real estate broker that owed us some money. So we had to figure out a way to get paid back. So we asked him to put a shingle on our front door. Um, Told him we'd give him $500 a month off the money that he owed us. And on a lunch break, you and I went and opened up the real estate company, and that's how we got started in real estate.
I love that story. Guys, it was the ultimate hold my beer moment. Scotty was running a successful mortgage practice, and that's how he and I met through a mutual friend early in my career. I worked actually for Scotty. He was my second boss in the mortgage business. And just as he told the story, it was kind of almost on a whim. The only way he was going to get repaid was if they opened a brokerage. So they partnered, opened a brokerage. He got everybody licensed, and the rest is history. So
Yeah,
some
you and I actually went to real estate school together.
remember that.
Yeah. Of course, you finished your test an hour before I did. I had to take a little bit longer.
Well, that's because I used the old the tree method. I just kind of, diagonally answered all the questions down the sheet of paper and hoped for the best. But yeah, so Scott's let the cat out of the bag. We've got quite a history together in the business, and I'm going to go ahead since we've gone down this path, and I'm just going to throw it out. One of the most memorable transactions in my career, we collectively as an office were working on a deal in excess of $100 million. It was a development deal. And this is going back when there weren't very many $100 million deals in South Florida real estate. So this was substantial. We had months worth of energy put into this, and it all blew up. And you sniffed it out right away that some of the people involved in the transaction weren't really who they said they were. And we all came back to the office, and collectively we were licking our wounds, and we all looked over at you, and you took this file, this stack of paper, probably, I don't know, this is an exaggeration, but it was a big stack of paper, and dropped it in the shred bin and picked up another file and said, I don't know about you guys, but I don't have time to cry over spilled milk. That's the polite version of what you said. We all need to
Right.
get back to work. And you picked up an $85,000 FHA first time homebuyer transaction and dug into that with the same energy and focus that you had just spent weeks on that big deal. Where does that come from? Where is your ability to pivot, switch gears, and give 100% of your energy to the client in front of you? Where does that come from?
Well, that's a very good question, Mark. I try to treat everybody exactly the way I'd want to be treated, regardless of loan size or, the home price, sale, whatever it may be. Just want to treat everybody just like I would want somebody to treat me. It's their smaller deals are just as important as a lot of the bigger deals. So I really try to take a hands-on approach, try to make everybody feel comfortable. And as you know, communication is key. You just want to let everybody know what's going on all the time and keep their anxiety low.
You said a lot right there. So communication is definitely the key amongst the professionals, but I think where it goes often overlooked, and I'm glad you said this, is with the client, because it becomes routine for us, right? We do this often enough that we know what the next puzzle piece that needs to hit the board is. But to the client, whether it's that first time buyer FHA transaction or the big multi-million dollar deals that you now specialize in, and I'd like to talk about that next, but it's as important to each of those clients, and it's their largest often financial transaction either of their life, but certainly at that moment. And you've got a keen ability to give it the attention that they need you to give it to, because it can feel routine, and you never let it feel routine to the client. So I'm glad that you said that. And would you share, I know one thing, in my opinion anyway, watching from afar, because our practices have, we've been on our own for a long time now, but we've remained professional and personal friends. You are very active in your community, and I'm not going to let this one go by. I was flipping through the news a month or so ago and saw you on the local news, walking up and down your street, passing out American flags. So share that story with me, if you would.
All right. About 10 years ago, when I moved into this community, being in the military and having a family that was in the military, I thought it'd be, a nice gesture on Veterans Day to, put some flags out. There's 450 homes in my neighborhood, so I didn't realize how long it would take me, but I had 450 flags and I put them all out through the neighborhood. And I got a pretty good response. Everybody was, very appreciative, and they would contact me and thank me. Not everybody was in the military, but most people had family members that were. So after the first year, I just continued doing it every year. And this year, one of our neighbors had decided to call up the local news station, and they did a nice little Veterans Day expose, and just watching me put flags on the neighborhood lawns and around the mailboxes.
I love that.
It was
I
pretty
love that.
fun.
Yeah, I love that. I had that. I know that guy moment when I was flipping through the news that morning. It was a blast.
Yeah.
And I really do admire that because of your service, Air Force, right?
Yes, sir. That's correct. Yeah.
Yep. So awesome that you're proudly acknowledging the military holidays, if you will. And I know they're not all celebrations, but they're certainly days of remembrance, and you don't let one of those go by. And I love that you took the 450 home community and made it part of that. But another thing I want to point out is, in the market, as we've transitioned into a more level playing field, I see a lot of agents trying to be too much to too many people, and then they lose their ability to serve their core clients because they're chasing opportunities wherever they come, and they lose their focus. You haven't done that. And I want to tell the story about your most recent listing, because I think that truly demonstrates what being part of a community, living that lifestyle and specializing in that lifestyle can make difference-wise when it comes to serving your clients. So can you share kind of your philosophy around being the guy in your neighborhood?
Absolutely, Mark. I try not to spread myself too thin. I try to stay, within the boundaries that I've been working in the last 10 to 12 years. For example, it's a perfect example. It just happened yesterday. I was showing my listing, and I had an agent told me that their buyers had put an offer in on a property and backed out of it, and had just missed out on another property. These were two of the properties that I was competing against. And I always wondered what happened on that first deal, why it had fallen apart within 5 days. So I asked the agent, she said, well, it had bad construction, it had termites and different things. So that made me think, okay, this has got to be the people that put the offer in on that house, and they're real buyers. So I was able to communicate to her the address, and I told her that that house was a flip, and that didn't surprise me. And then I also knew of the other property that she had just missed out on, because the buyers were actually putting an offer in with me, and we're their second choice. So by knowing all of this and knowing the homes in my community, I was able to determine that these people are real buyers. And I think we're going to have a successful conclusion.
No, that's awesome. And for our listeners and our viewers, Scott specializes in a very unique community. And what are there, five or six canals, ocean access canals in your community?
Yes, I believe there's eight, Mark,
Okay,
going
eight,
all the
yeah.
way over to Pelican Harbor.
Awesome neighborhood, but because of that, you've been there so long that you've seen all of the new big houses built. You've seen the flips, the tear downs. You know, when Mr. Johnson dies and his kids are bringing that property to the market because you boat in that community, you golf in that community, you shop and live in that community. And I'm glad you shared that, because I think having that local knowledge, that's one more demonstration of how it makes a huge difference. And I want to take that full circle, because you just shared on the buy side what a difference that makes, but you're involved in a pretty large listing right now that, correct me if I'm wrong, the prior and we won't throw anybody under the bus and mention
Of
people or
course.
brokerages, but
Right.
they're kind of well renowned because of their marketing. They're high profile, but they're not local to your specific neighborhood. And tell the story of that. That property was on the market for months and you had it under contract in days. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. Yes, sir, it was. The property had been on the market for 7.5 months. The sellers had not had an offer, had not even one person come to the table willing to buy the property. The premier broker in our area was the listing agent. They had only sold 2 homes in this neighborhood, and I've sold 13. So I knew if I could get that listing, I'd be able to help them a great deal. So after the 7.5 months, the sellers decided they had had enough, and they had hired me. And within 3 days, I had an offer for them.
I think another thing that makes a huge difference when it comes to living the lifestyle is you're a boater and there are eight canals in your neighborhood, ocean access canal. So a new guy moves in and he needs somebody to work on his boat. You pick up the phone and introduce him to your mechanic or your guy for whatever it is. I remember not too long ago that a transaction that you were kind enough to bring me into had some seawall or some bulkhead issues, and it wasn't but two phone calls away. You had the solution provider on the phone to kind of dispel any misconceptions about what was next with that seawall or what would have been required. And I think if anything can be taken away from these little short stories is having access to that local database of, lifestyle service providers, in addition to being an awesome agent. I think that goes a long way to getting a property successfully sold and then a buyer comfortably transitioned into that new lifestyle, if you will.
Absolutely. It does help a great deal. For example, I was on a dock yesterday doing a showing, and the people were from Vancouver, Canada, and they were asking me different things and different proximities to what they could expect. And I let them know that they were right between two inlets. You're 30 minutes to the Boca Inlet, you're 30 minutes to the Boynton Inlet. So depending on where you wanted to fish, or if you wanted to go to the Bahamas, you'd want to go to Boynton. So I was just giving them some inside information on where to go and what to do. And they had asked me if they would like to see the seawall. And so I made an appointment for later on today to take them on my boat at low tide so that they can view the seawall and see that it's been capped and battered, that it is in good shape, but then that's not going to be an issue for them in the future.
I love that, because as a homeowner in that community, you've got the best lens on what living there is all about. And you just mentioned some terms regarding the seawall maintenance that somebody who's not in the water on the canal living that lifestyle, an agent may not even know what that means, let alone have access to the real data. Because we hear people all the time say, oh, that's a $5,000 repair, that's a $10,000. Well, when you're talking about, putting in batter piling and footing in a seawall reconstruction, those are big numbers, and that because of the lifestyle. So I think that's super important. I was going to ask you
Yeah.
how often you'll I wasn't going to say invite some clients into your boat and take them on the trip so they can experience what living in that community is like.
I offer it to every single person that looks at a house that I'm showing. Anybody who wants to go fishing, all they have to do is come and look at one of my listings. Chances are they're going to be on the boat for
What
sure.
one thing I really admire is I've been invited to a few of your parties, and they're always a blast. And we're not going to, we won't spill any tea about what goes on at one of Scotty's parties. But one thing that I always find fascinating is when the guests are all mingling amongst themselves and having conversation, it always comes around to, how did you meet Scotty? How do you know Scott? And we all have our, my experience was professional, but I can't tell you how many people say, oh, he helped me buy a house, he helped me sell a house. And that fascinates me, because we hear, in the face of all of this technology and the big websites and the lead providers and all of the stuff that happens online, where we lose that personal connection, you've maintained it and built quite a portfolio of business. And where I'm going with this is, how many clients become friends, or friends become clients in your circle?
I would have to say that most everybody I've sold a home to, we on a first name basis, inviting each other to do, various things in the community. Always a card or presents, during the holidays. But for the most part, if anybody needs anything in the neighborhood, anything to do with, their home or something that they're not familiar with because they haven't been here that long, they know they can call me, and they do. And it's always refreshing to, restart that friendship if we haven't seen each other for a while. But some of the people, after 9 or 10 years, are still calling me, and they've lived here almost as long as I have.
Well, and you're that guy, right? You've become the guy in the community, and it's not for you just benefiting your business. I think that's how you live your life. When you and I first met professionally, your social circle was also your professional circle. So kudos to you, because I think that you've successfully kind of intertwined those two, and it's genuine. And if anybody can take anything away from this short interview, I think it's that you're real and you do have a heart to serve, whether it's that first time. I know you're helping a friend with a rental property, and that's not your specialty anymore, but you're willing to do that because that's a friend.
Absolutely. The other day, he called me in a panic. The person he was renting from decided he'd had enough. He was going to take his family and move out of the country. The seawall had to be replaced at his home. It's not in my neighborhood, but he had just had enough. He had several rental properties, and he was moving, and it caught my friend off guard. He had a lot of anxiety. He thought it'd be very difficult to find a rental in a short period of time. And today he's looking at one right now, and I'm showing him another one at 4 o'clock. And I put his mind at ease by showing him you have several to choose from, and not to be nervous. So I think within a 24 to 48 hour period, we got him settled down, and he's going to have a place to live. And I let the agents know on the other end, I don't want any commission. I'm just helping a friend of mine. I'm an agent. And if I need to show the property, I will. But he's been a friend for a couple of years, and I'm sure when he is ready to buy a house, he'll probably give me a call.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, and let's not make that a practice, guys. Don't call Scotty just if you want a free deal, because
Please don't do that.
because he's an awesome practitioner, and yeah, he's earned every penny, at least in the transactions I've been involved. But you have a keen ability to keep everybody calm, and I think it goes back to that initial comment that you made about communication and realizing that the transaction is super important to the person, no matter what the price point. Hey, while I got you, before we wrap up, what is your favorite story of a transaction that you've been involved with, either that went really well or was a nightmare, one that you look back on now and laugh?
Oh Lord, honey, can you help me on this one?
Is she with you?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a book of them. I'm going to try to think of a good one. We've got nightmares and we have success stories. Let's
Where's
see.
your partner in crime? She's the pretty one and the smart one. We should have had her on camera the whole
Absolutely.
time.
Who's got all the brains, right?
I'd say,
Which one would you
well,
say?
I mean, Lloyd was a nice success.
Yeah, Lloyd was very nice. Actually, it goes back to the flags. It was the very first year I put the flags out, And this gentleman, Lloyd, had found out who had put him out there and that I was a real estate agent, and he just happened to be ready to sell. So he called me and I went over and I met with him. And all the agents that he had met with were telling him, you can only sell your house, for about 1.2, maybe 1.1. And even the broker I was working for had talked to him. And I told him that was ridiculous. I can easily get you 1.4. And I found a doctor in our neighborhood that bought the house within a week for 1.4. And he moved back to New York and sold that house. And then shortly thereafter, he wanted to move back to Florida, and he called, and I found him another home here. And he's become a really good friend, and it's always a pleasure to talk to him. He's one of those people that always has a joke and a smile. And I was real fortunate to meet him, and that goes back 10 years ago with a flag in the front yard.
That's awesome. And you said something there that I don't want the listeners or the viewers to miss. You had an opportunity, and everybody else was taking the path of least resistance, right? You said 1.1 or 1.2.
Right.
But, and stop me if I've got this wrong, but through your social networking, if you will, you're golfing, you're fishing in the community with your group, your people, your sphere, you knew a doctor for that property. And in a week, you sold a $1.4 million property. You achieved an additional $300,000 in the transaction for your seller, got your friend, the doctor, the property in the neighborhood they wanted. And that win had nothing to do with social media, nothing to do with email marketing. It had to do with the old fashioned, I know a guy who knows a guy. Let me get Scotty on the phone.
Exactly. I said, let me make a few phone calls. We did the listing agreement, and he was very surprised, along with some of my associates in the real estate company, that we were able to get that much money in a short period of time. And that doctor is still a very good friend of mine, and I've done other real estate transactions for him, but he loved the neighborhood so much, he still lives in that house today.
That's awesome. I was going to give you flowers for the lease transaction. You recently were kind enough to refer me the financing on a deal where the gentleman had leased the property for a while. The deal went south. They were going to lose the option, lose a bunch of money. And again, through personal contacts and your willingness to make the numbers work, you were able to get that term extended. They bought the property, and I think they walked into about $400,000 in equity.
They did, Mark, but don't sell yourself short. You're very instrumental in getting that deal done. I couldn't have done it without you.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Well, you know what? I really, really enjoy that we had an opportunity to spend some time together. Before we wrap this up, is there anything, I talk a lot, so I know I have a tendency to dominate the conversation, but is there anything that you want to share in light of what you're seeing in the market, what you're seeing with, the buying, whatever thoughts you have? I want to give you the floor for some time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll keep it short. I know people are busy and they have other things to do than listen to me talk. But I just want to say I think everybody realizes right now it is a seller's market. The availability of homes is low, and there's a lot of determining factors on why that is. And there's one thing that I usually talk about every day. Every day someone comes up to me and asks me, Scott, when's the right time to buy? And I always tell them when you can afford a home. Trying to price the market is so difficult, or trying to get the timing just right. As you know, Mark, if you owned a home before the pandemic and you still own it today, chances are your value in your home has doubled. The people that were trying to time the market pre-pandemic, they're still renting, and they missed their shot. You and I have seen interest rates at a low level throughout our career, and now they're at 7%. Chances are they could be 9% next year, and the people buying this year are going to look like geniuses. So as soon as you can afford a home, get into the game and let your options, get explored. Because what happens, you think, well, I don't want to be paying a mortgage at that interest rate. Well, if you're renting, you are paying a mortgage. It's just not yours.
I love that. I love that you said that, because you and I have been involved in real estate at ground zero in the Florida market since the late 90s for me, 99 for me to be exact, but I know you were in before me because you were already running your brokerage when I got licensed.
Right.
And we both can point to clients who bought at the perceived wrong time, at the upswing of the crash cycle in 2005 through 8. Everything blew up. Their property was worth half of what they paid, but guess what? It's worth 3 or 4 times right now what they paid, depending. Yeah. And I say it on the radio all the time. Appreciation is the sexy sister. Everybody wants the sexy sister. Like, give me that. But the tried and true principal reduction, if property never, ever appreciates another penny, over time, you're paying your principal balance down and you're building equity in that property. And somebody asked me the other day, I hear you say that all the time. And if I buy this house for $300,000 and it never goes up, what do I have at the end? I said, 300,000. You have whatever the property's worth. If it never goes up, you've got the principal reduction. So I think that now in this market, having people in your corner like you for all of your clients on the real estate side, I feel like we do the same thing on the mortgage side, but having somebody with a little gray hair on their side, a bald spot big enough to have to wear a hat, because we've been through it, we've seen it. So we're not making our recommendations, or we're not reacting to emotions. It's to data, which I think is hugely important.
I agree with you. We've been through a couple of different cycles, and the cycles happen for different reasons. So you never know what's going to be around the corner. So as soon as you can get into the game, and sooner you'll have options by owning your own home.
I love it. I love it. Well, my man, I appreciate you taking the time to be on the Really Great Agents podcast. Guys, if you want to reach out to Scotty, he works in Southern Palm Beach County in the Boca del Rey waterfront community. Scotty, do you work outside of that area, or is that pretty much your target?
That's pretty much my target area. I do, venture out of the area. I have friends, that, might be moving in from out of state, or people that are giving up the waterfront lifestyle for the golf communities.
Gotcha.
Basically, if you can sell waterfront, you can sell anything, because there's a lot that goes into selling waterfront property.
Well, there you go, guys. If you want to reach out to Scott, get to know him, get to know his better half, who's shyly sitting off to the side of the camera. But I promise you, she's integral in the operation. She's a brilliant, brilliant woman. We're going to drop all of the contact information for Scott below in the show notes. And brother, thank you so much for being on Really Great Agents. And I'm going to let you get about your day. And I'm going to have you back because I want to deep dive some strategies around what you do locally, a little more specifics, if you will.
I'm looking forward to it, Mark. Thanks for having me today.
All right. Wow, that went fast. All right, guys, let's put a bow on this episode. Mark EITEL here, host of the nationally syndicated Mr. Mortgage radio show, team lead at the Mr. Mortgage team. Guys, if you want to learn more about me, check out MrMortgageRadio.com. That's right, this show is brought to you by the Mr. Mortgage team. If you want to learn more about this week's guest, all of their contact information is in the show notes below. I will see you back here next week, same time, same place, as we introduce you to another really great agent.